What's going on, Bills Mafia? I am Lance Nelson. To my right is Ben Shoop, and to my left is Scott Casson. This is Triple Coverage. Welcome back for another episode. We appreciate y'all tuning in to the Built-in Buffalo Network. And tonight we got a pretty exciting episode. Going to talk about some major topics in the quarterbacks for the Buffalo Bills, which I think is super interesting. And then kind of put a bow on the voluntary portion of OTAs and what the latest news was from this past week here. Gentlemen, how we doing? Shoop, I guess we'll start with you. What's up, brother?
Doing pretty well. It's another good week and another kind of getting. I mean, it's one really closer to the Bills season. We did have, I believe, the preseason schedules came out this week, so that was also another thing. At least the times and everything. Yeah, it's slowly going to be getting more and more as stuff goes on as we get closer to July, August, start getting towards full football season there. It's good. And my Celtics, I had to rep them tonight since they did go on to get the big win yesterday. And it's been a good week, good show. Hopefully tonight too as well.
Ben's trying to get removed from the live here with his Boston references. Anyway, what's up, Scott? How you doing tonight, brother?
Doing great. What's going on, fellas? Excited to talk about the Bills. This week I'm in Saratoga Springs, New York, which is my actual hometown. So at my parents' house, going to the Belmont tomorrow. Super excited for it to be in Saratoga. So excited to talk some Bills. And then if anybody knows Caroline Street, I'm going to talk about the Bills and then go hit Caroline Street. So going to be a good weekend.
Awesome, awesome. I'm sure they'll be throwing some waiters down this weekend then for sure. So that's
One or
exciting
two,
stuff.
yeah.
Horse racing's got to be one of the most fun things to go and throw some money on. So definitely jealous. It'll be a good time for you, I'm sure. All right. First segment, we're gonna lead off with a 1 minute segment here from Shoop. So get this set up here, Shoop, and take it away.
All righty. Sounds good. All right. So last week I had a little bit of a fun one. This week's kind of similar as well. There's not too much going on as we already said. But past few years, the Buffalo Bills have started to gain a lot more primetime games. They've been featured as the primetime team in as one of the bigger primetime teams in the NFL. This year, still got a decent amount of primetime games, good amount. However, at home, technically, there's only two primetime games. I know some people might count the Chiefs at 4 o'clock as one, but we're counting night games only as primetime. So they only have two this year. It's the Jags and the 49ers. So my question to you guys this week is, are you happy that it's only two primetime games this year? Were you hoping for more at home? Or are you wishing that they even had less at home? Or do you think two is kind of the good amount for your preference? So let me know what you guys think. For me personally, I'm happy it's two. Two is about that what I'd want as a Bills fan. Maybe even one more if they went with another one less would be fine. But I think two is the sweet spot. So I think I'm happy with two. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. And yeah, that's gonna be mine for this week. Oh, muted.
Yeah, this is amateur hour. It's such a tough thing to switch between those. Anyways, I think it's good. I don't wish there were more because then I have to be at I go to every home game, and for me, it's night games are a little bit tougher. Um, so I'm good with the two. I also really like that the schedule has only one time really that we play back-to-back home games in back-to-back weeks. Really twice, but there's a bye week in between the other time. So that really sets up nicely for someone like me and my schedule. But I think, yeah, I think Buffalo enjoys kind of those daytime games, and I like going to the stadium earlier in the day and then spending it there, and then being able to be home and catch some of the night games and stuff like that. So I'm good with the two primetime home games.
Yeah, I think two's good. We got a bunch of primetime games on the road. I think three, maybe even four. There's something about those primetime tailgates. Not every Bills fan can make it to game time, and for these primetime games, they're big games. We need everybody there, and at least somewhat knowing what's going on. So yeah, I think two's a good number. Those are fun. Same as Lance, I go to every home game. So Two is good. Day games are good. And then also, I feel like with the primetime games, I miss everything else that happens that day. So you get to the stadium around like noon or 1, you kind of follow along, but not that closely. So it's nice to be able to have the 1 o'clock, get back home or get to wherever you're going by, halftime of the 4 o'clock slate, and really be able to watch the Sunday night game. So yeah, I think 2 is a good number.
Yeah, great. Totally agree. I think that's exactly right. I mean, you can't change it, so 2 is what it is, right? I think you
It could
kind of have to
change.
accept it. But yeah,
That
if they
is true.
flex something later in the season, maybe it does change. But I think a lot of people are happy in the 1 o'clock, and even the 4 o'clock would be a lot of fun. But I think as you start getting later into the 7:30, 8 o'clock starts, uh, like Scott was mentioning, Bills Mafia is starting at like 6 a.m. regardless of what time the game is. So as the later as the games get later and later, some of the Mafia tends to tail off, I guess, towards the start of those later games. But it's all a marathon here in Buffalo. It's a good time. So for like I said, just glad that only 2 for me. I personally like the 1 o'clock starts. So.
Yeah, I'm the same
With
way.
that being said, we're gonna jump into, our show here, and talk about the QB room with the Bills. Um, you may know the starting QB, the best quarterback in the league, uh, but from a physical standpoint, physical ability standpoint, in my opinion, and Josh Allen, we have Mitchell Trubisky, and then Shane Buechele, right, Scott? That's the
Yeah, Shane Buechele.
Buechele. So I think I botched that last week or whatnot, but I apologize to Shane. Getting names right is very important, and I know that. So first up is Allen's first full season with Joe Brady um, as the offensive coordinator. I think we talked a little bit about Brady's comments last week too. So, what are your thoughts on what you're going to see with the first full year of Brady and Allen, and how quickly do you expect them to have success on offense, or do you think it's going to take some time to really gain traction and get this thing rolling?
Yeah, I'm excited for the first full year under Brady. We had half of it last year, and as we saw, it took a little bit of time for things to click. But once they did down the stretch, like it really took off. I think we're going to see kind of a different. I think things are going to be asked of Josh this year a little bit differently. To use a basketball reference, because Ben mentioned the Celtics, I think we're going to see more of a Chris Paul Josh Allen and less of a 2017-18 LeBron James with the Cavs Josh Allen. I think he's going to be asked to distribute the ball to a lot of different places. Get it out quick to James Cook, a lot more running the ball. Get it out quick to Curtis Samuel, Kincaid across the middle. It's going to be a lot less of, hey, Josh Allen, do everything. Josh Allen, save us. Josh Allen, throw it up deep to Diggs and Davis. I think he's going to be more of like a point guard this season, just like getting the ball in his playmakers' hands, quick pops, quick throws across the middle, screen game, run game, maybe even a little bit less running from Josh Allen, especially in the red zone where he tends to like have a lot of running, but takes a lot of hits. So I think it's going to be a little bit different what they ask him to do. More of a distributor, less of the kind of end all be all of the offense, which I think could lead to maybe a little bit lower stats, but hopefully a lot more efficiency and hopefully more wins, which is, the only thing that matters.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit last week with this offense, but I think when it comes to Josh, I think his numbers might start out slower. Like you might not see him throwing for 300 yards the first couple games. You might see him taking that more of a kind of cautious approach to this offense to kind of just get his feet under him for the first few weeks, then start rolling into deeper into the playbook. And I think you'll see a more relaxed Josh Allen. I think if anything, even if he is making some mistakes, you will see that he's not going to be getting as frustrated. He's not going to be as upset afterwards. He'll be able to move on and get it the next drive or whatever it is. So I think I'm excited to see Joe Brady in this with Josh Allen in this offense. I think you'll see Josh, like Josh has kind of said, he's going to be forced to use his eyes a little bit more. Now, that can also be a little bit daunting for Josh Allen because you know him, he can lock in on a target sometimes, and he's going to throw it there, and he's going to try to make a play. We'll see how that adjustment kind of goes with Joe Brady and kind of having to scan the field more, look at everybody more instead of, okay, this play is designed for Diggs, we're going to him. This play is designed for Davis, we're going to him. And then there's maybe one or two other options, or it's just a dump off. I think it's going to be good for him at the end of the year, but as the year goes on. But I do think early on he'll kind of be a little bit more cautious, not try to force things as much, try to get his feet under him and try to, just understand this offense and how he's going to operate in it. Because until you are in that, full on week one, even preseason, full on hitting, you aren't going to know how the offense is fully going to operate. Yes, they go through training camp, they go through preseason, everything. But until it gets to week one, that's when the real hardball starts and players are really going after it fully, and it's the ones versus the ones, not twos versus ones some weeks in preseason, whatever it is. So I'm excited for Joe Brady and Josh Allen in this offense, but I think I think the offense will be fine, but I think Josh's numbers might be a little bit slow to start the season.
Yeah, I like to just bring this up quick. Dave makes a good point. Owner, founder of Built in Buffalo. Appreciate you tuning in, brother. Best version of Josh Allen, first time it's been labeled his offense. So Joe Brady said, this is Josh Allen's offense. I'm not going to change things that's going to make Allen have to think about things on the field. And then we have some good points in the chat here, I think, is that he won't be under pressure to get the ball to Diggs. I like that point, Sandra, because there are so many weapons now in this offense. And I think Joe Brady already mentioned that everyone's going to eat. So with that approach, it feels like to me that Allen could be more loose and more relaxed, where he doesn't have anyone chirping in his ear after every single play about, oh, that should have went to me or whatever. And there's going to be a player or two that are going to be designed to get the ball on each play as, the primary options, but he's able to really just read and react to what he sees out there. And if the primary read's not there, and if the primary read was Diggs before, he probably felt a need to really see what he could do. And maybe this leads to less running because of he's not going to need to feel the need to extend the play as much because he can just go through his progression and get to a guy that may be open. But I don't think they're necessarily going to call too fewer run plays with him, because I think he's still, one of the best short yardage runners that we have. And you saw even last year he took it to the house from multiple different places on the field. So I think even as a 20 or 30 yard out offensive snap, you could still have him running there and looking to get into the end zone. So that's something we'll discuss a little bit more about his rushing in just a minute. But yeah, we talked about that Diggs and Davis presence, and how do you think that's really going to affect? Let's talk about that more directly, about the effect of no Davis or Diggs. Guys that have been with him for most of his career and really led him to a decent amount of success, but now are gone. And so new guys coming in may not have that clout or that necessarily relationship with Allen. So now again, I think should be more reactive and more like just trust what you see, be able to fit the ball in where you see fit. And how do you think that may help, I guess, in the offense without Diggs and Davis this year?
Yeah, I think it will help definitely, just because it's also, again, that pressure aspect you're talking about with, is there the pressure to get Diggs and Davis the ball? I mean, you had Gabe Davis though getting some games where he didn't even get a catch for multiple games last season. I mean, it wasn't like it was one or two games. It was something that became very noticeable in around the NFL, that Gabe Davis, went catchless a lot of times. Diggs obviously not as much, or not at all, because they're kind of force feeding him the ball a little bit. But I think it's going to be a little bit, like I said, I think it will be a little bit of adjustment period for him. but he'll end up finding those 2-3 guys that he's going to at the end of the day trust more maybe than the others. I think that will end up one of them will end up being Dalton Kincaid. Khalil Shakir, I think, will be another guy. And then there'll be that third one that emerges sometime throughout the season, whether that is week 1, whether it's week 7, right? Whether it's week 12, whatever week it is, I think a third guy will kind of emerge in that role. If it doesn't, though, that's completely fine. I think like we've seen even in the comments, it's everybody eats, it's everybody's going to get the ball. And I do think without Diggs and Davis there's less of the pressure to say, okay, well, last year was Gabe Davis is going into contract here. He would get questioned after the game. Oh, why aren't you getting catches? Why are you going no catches during a game or during 2 games, 3 games? Diggs, why are you not getting the ball as much? Why are your numbers down? You're not going to get that this year at the end of the games. Josh isn't going to be asked, why didn't Khalil Shakir get the ball 8 times this game or targeted 8 times this game? Why didn't Dalton Kincaid get targeted 10 times this game? Now, towards the end of the season, maybe that once we start seeing who those guys are that are going to be his top options, those might start to come. But the first few weeks, it's not going to be that. It's not going to be who are your number ones, who's your number twos. At least in Josh's head, he's not going to have to be thinking about that as much. So I think at the end of the day, without Diggs and Davis, I think it will be more good mentally, maybe than skill talent wise. Obviously, talent you can't really replace Stephon Diggs overnight. Gabe Davis, we'll see if you can replace him overnight. Obviously, we've seen compared to the other markets for wide receiver 2s, he didn't exactly get wide receiver 2 money. So I think you can replace a guy like Davis. Diggs is going to be a little bit harder to replace, but I do think with Josh being a little bit more relaxed, he'll be able to spread the ball around and not feel that pressure to get the ball to somebody 8 or 9 times a game.
Yeah, in theory, this should allow Josh to play a lot freer, not have to worry about who he's targeting. Like you said, people chirping in his ear. But like you said, also, we lost a top 5-ish receiver for most of the time he was in Buffalo. Obviously, Diggs got quiet at the end last year, but that's going to be tough. And I think it's going to be tough in the beginning of the season on 3rd and 5, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 9, where, I mean, hey, everybody in the stadium knew the ball was going to Diggs, but it worked out more times than it didn't. So who is going to be that go-to guy for Josh now that may now get more coverage than they got before with Diggs and Davis? Like, yeah, Shakir had an awesome year last season, playing mostly out of the slot, so not quite the same coverage. But without Diggs, if the number 1 corner is on Shakir, how's that going to look? So, like I said, in theory, it opens Josh up to play a lot freer, spread the ball around. I think we're going to have a lot of guys, 3, 4, 5 guys have between 600 and 800 yards, where before we had Diggs with 12, 13, 1400, Davis with 750, and then it was like a big drop off to our number 3 receiver. I think there's going to be a lot more balance, and I think that's a good thing. But there will definitely be some growing pains in the beginning of where does Josh go in gotta have it type downs.
Yeah, I like that. I think Shakir definitely, with his prowess of catching a higher percentage of balls than most, or was it,
Like
uh,
anybody ever.
yeah, so just a very staggering number at his catch percentage. Can he continue that? That gives him the front line, I guess, to be that third down go-to kind of guy if you have that trust with him, and that continues to build and fosters into success. But like Ben said, the coverage isn't going to be necessarily focused on another guy, so he might be more of a focus. Kincaid obviously is going to be there. And then really that emergence of the third guy, I think Keon Coleman's going to emerge and be very, very nice in this offense, and especially on a third down. I think if they're sleeping on him at all, it's going to be a mistake for that defense, and allow the Bills to really exploit them with Keon Coleman. Um, third and shorts, I definitely think Samuel's going to be a weapon as well on some quick routes and things. But overall, I think you know the Bills are set up here to develop early on. Maybe have Samuel be that guy, and then Keon Coleman, as the season progresses and earns that, can definitely step in, and it's going to make the Bills offense, although the names aren't there at the top of your lists, I think that it's still going to make the Bills offense tough to defend, regardless. So that's kind of my prediction without Diggs or Davis. I really think it bodes well for Shakir, Samuel, and Coleman. I think those 3 are going to help us a ton. And then guys like MVS and if Claypool makes this roster are going to be surprises to a lot of people. Um, and then we'll see what Mac Hollins might have for an impact on the receiving core. Thinking about his impact more on other facets of the game, blocking or special teams wise and that kind of thing. But we'll see. You know, we'll see how he progresses in this offense too, because Josh Allen just spoke about him a lot so far this season, and just makes you wonder kind of what are you going to get from him in the passing game itself. Um, any rebuttals on the receiver thing, the Mac Hollins or any of the other guys that you guys want before we move on to the running game?
I got nothing just because I think, it's gonna be you might not even, like I said, you might not even see necessarily a third guy emerge. It might just be Coleman, MBS, you get Claypool, kind of just all of them, like Scott said, in that similar range of, they're all going to get a similar amount of targets. They're all going to get a similar amount of yards. So there might not even necessarily be that third option that emerges this year. Might be just we have a bunch of third options that are able to step up in different points, whether that is Samuel, whether it is Coleman, whether it is whoever. So that would be the only thing, I guess, is I'm not necessarily, do I think somebody will emerge? Yes, but I'm not convinced 100% that somebody's going to, because I think with the Joe Brady offense, you could see, like Scott said, just multiple people getting that similar range of, certain 50 targets, 60 targets, whatever it is.
Yeah, and I think it was cool. Dan Fates and the Buffalo Plus folks uh, used my question about that, about the targets that the receivers might get, and they said they didn't think anyone's going to get, and you said this as well, Ben, that no one's going to get like 30 more than the next guy. It's all going to be in that range of with maybe within 10 targets for each guy. So I agree. I think there's plenty of options for this offense, and that's going to make things easier more so than more difficult because it's not going to necessarily, I think, be the pressure to feed one or two guys. And Gabe Davis went 7 games in which he, played snaps and didn't get more than one reception. So one or fewer receptions in 7 of the games last year, and then didn't play in the postseason. So um, that's huge. And so I think you're gonna if Mac Hollins plays that role and doesn't get necessarily any targets in a game, or there's one game in which Gabe didn't even get a target. So Mac Hollins definitely could be suited for that sort of role in the blocking scheme, things like that. But we'll see what it produces from a passing, targeting, and receptions standpoint.
Yeah, if you
To
want a
be
6'4" guy to run around and not get any catches, put me out there.
There you go. You're already in shape too. You're ready to roll. Just tape up those ankles.
A lot of tape. A lot of tape and maybe Dr. Needle.
So let's move on to the running game with the Bills and the use of Josh Allen. I just said, Josh Allen's their best short yardage runner. Even with the signing of Ray Davis, he's not necessarily proven yet. And I know a guy like Izzy's going to say like, oh, Ray Davis is going to be that. Maybe he will, but I just wanted to get your thoughts with Joe Brady. Do you see, I guess, what did you see after Brady took over? I didn't see necessarily any shying away from getting Allen out there and taking the ball. So for me, I think it's going to be I'm more of the same, or he may be asked in different situations to do more in the running game, but I don't see it being a dramatic drop off of significantly less running from Josh Allen.
Yeah, I look at Josh running as kind of our break glass in case of emergency type plan. So the beginning of the season last year, it was clear just by watching that they were trying to limit the hits he took. He even almost looked to like second guess his scrambling at times to like stay in the pocket, which led to some not great play. Then the second half of the season when Brady took over, 6-6. It's like, yeah, we got to run the ball, like whatever it takes type thing. So I kind of see it maybe being a bit of the same, like starting off a little bit slower. Like obviously he'll get his goal line carries, which again also make me nervous because all sorts of things happen in those piles. But as the season goes on, he'll start to run more and more. I always remember back to 2021 when the Bills were in Tampa and they were down like 25 and Josh just started running wild. And it was after that he started running a ton, and then they got hot, and then they went all the way to where they went. We don't have to talk about how that season ended because it still hurts.
And
So
so do you attribute, I don't want to butt into your
go
spot
ahead.
here, but I just think it's a relevant question. Do you think that it's the time of the year that makes his running change, or because it did have an uptick after Brady took over, but it also was like, dude, we got to win some games as well. So what do you think, like in the first 10 games under Dorsey, the most attempts Allen had was 3 in a game, and he
Yeah.
had 7 touchdowns in those 10 games. The least attempts he had under Brady after week 11 was 3, so he was 3 or more in every game, and he had 11 rushing touchdowns in that. Is that more to say we got to win games and we need you to put us on your back, or is that maybe a little bit of a philosophy thing with Joe Brady as well? A little bit of both. What do you think about, you know, how that all played out, especially last year?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of both because there's no denying just watching Josh play first half versus second half. He was a lot freer in the second half and he was having a lot more fun. So I'm wondering if Brady was like, "Hey, dude, like, hey, like it's to quote Waterboy, last game of the year, can't hold anything back now. Like, you got to run the ball
We
because if they
know,
lost,
we know, we know.
because if they lost one of those games, they might not have made the playoffs. So
Right.
I think combination of timing and just kind of the philosophy under Brady of, hey, dude, like just go let it rip, like go have fun. If the run's there, take it. If something else is there, take that. So it does seem to have been a theme though. Like as we get later in the season, and especially playoff time, like Josh runs a lot more. So I see that kind of being the same this year, like a build up, and then second half of the season when you got to have it, like he's literally he's literally a live buffalo playing quarterback for us. So who's stopping that? So like when you got to have the yards, that's I think when he runs more. So it scares me every time he hurdles. My heart stops, and I know because my Apple Watch tells me. So hopefully we see some smarter running as well. But he's just so unstoppable at it that it has to be part of the game. So I think it'll be kind of similar to last season where he'll probably build up as we go.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think it will be a build up, but I also think like when you talk about Dorsey compared to Brady, right? It was they were trying to minimize his running. They were saying, "Hey, we don't want you taking as many hits." And while I do think Brady will have similar message of like, "Hey, if it's not needed in the first 5 6 weeks, you don't have to like do it, right? You don't have to." But at the same time, Joe Brady knows what everybody else knows in Bill's Mafia is Josh Allen's at his best when he's allowed to just go play his game, right? He's allowed to go play what he wants to do and really just be that baller that he is, right? And that's part of the reason. Yes, sometimes it hurts him. Sometimes he might have a little bit, a couple turnovers because of it. But at the end of the day, that's what makes Josh Allen Josh Allen. And I think that's one thing that hurt him last year was you were seeing, like you said, Lance, was that kind of hesitancy to even go, right? To even just get out of the pocket. And you could see that hurt him in a little bit. Maybe not even, just by taking a bad play after, just mentally after that drive of, oh, I should have ran, but I'm being told not to run or whatever it is. It just seemed like mentally it kind of messed with him. And I know I seen a couple people saying that they wish Josh runs less. I'm the opposite. Now, I'm not going to say run him as much as you run Lamar Jackson or anything in the game, but I think with the emergence of James Cook as a I don't know if you just heard that as a massive car just went by,
Yeah, are you at a
and
racetrack?
I all I know, I don't know, but it sounded like one as soon as they went by. But it was Josh Allen actually. No. But yeah, I'm actually a fan of him running when he wants and running him when he needs. Because I think it won't just help Josh, it will help the run game. It will help Ray Davis, it will help James Cook, it will help Ty Johnson, it will help the offense as a whole. Because as we saw towards the end of last year, the run game became more and more of a focal point and a more of a hey, we are a running football team as much as we are a passing football team, right? This is NFL is a passing league. They're always going to pass the ball more, but at the end of the day, they showed, hey, we can run the ball if we need, and when we want. And I think having Josh Allen, having defenses have to really know Josh is going to run whenever he wants or whenever he needs, just makes them even think a little bit more, and I think opens up the offense even more. So if anything, I'm a fan of letting him run maybe even a little bit more, kind of doing what they did last year of, hey, 3 or more times a game. Do not let him, I mean, if he doesn't need to, obviously, yeah, less than 3 times, but what do the best quarterbacks do? They let them play their games. Mahomes, when he needs to run, he runs. And he got hurt last year too. It happens. Lamar Jackson's gotten hurt, but when he runs, he needs to run, because at the end of the day, if you want to win football games and you want to win consistently, you're going to need your guys going out there and doing what they do best without having to think, hey, maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe, just because I might get injured, I won't do that. Obviously, like Scott said, he does need to be smarter in a lot of areas when it comes to running. But I don't think that necessarily has to do with deciding when to and not to run. I saw even John talked about how he doesn't slide. That's, I think, the more of the aspect for him. He needs to learn, hey, just if I don't need those extra 2-3 yards, just take a knee, slide, and go down. And that's more what I would like to see him take a step in, instead of just running less. I think it's just running smarter than less.
Yeah, definitely can agree with that. I think short yardage situations are going to be something to monitor. Just catching the other team off guard, really, to try to get the ability to gain yardage in strategic situations, those kind of things. Um, you got to put the ball in the hands of your best players. And now, without Diggs here, Allen is just so far over the top our best. So, um, yeah. Moving on, though, I think we should get into some predictions for Josh Allen in 2024. What do you guys think? I think that at least, touchdowns, interceptions, and maybe some yards if you'd like to get into that. But what do you guys expect, or kind of what are you thinking Josh Allen's going to put up for numbers this year in the new scheme, or with the new OC, I guess, first full year calling and the new parts around him?
Yeah, if you look at the last few years, he's been around that on average like 4,350 yards range. So I think, I don't think you'll see him throw for 5,000 yards. I don't think you'll see him throw for under 4,000. I think we'll still be in that similar, 4,300 range, 4,400 range. The one thing I do think that will go up, though, is I think his completion percentage will go up. I think you're going to see Brady take a kind of a step towards saying, hey, just get the ball out, get it out fast, get it to these guys that we got weapons for you. Last year, he was at about 66%. The 2 years prior, he's at 63. 2020, he was at 69.2. So I think you'll see more towards that 69-70 range, because they'll put more of an onus on just get the ball out, just get it to the open guy. If he's open, throw it. Don't look necessarily every time for the big play. Get it to your guys, whether it's Kincaid, Shakir, Samuel, those guys that can make plays, right? And just get the ball in their hands, let them make the plays, because you know that they're going to come down with it more times than not. So I think one thing you will see, I think his completion percentage will go up, not a ton, but just a little bit. I do think it will go up. His touchdowns, passing at least wise, right? He's had 37, 36, 35, 29 the past 4 years. Last year you saw a dip. I still think it might be around that 30 range, mostly because of the rushing touchdowns. I think that will take away, again, like last year, a lot of his passing touchdowns. And then interceptions, I hope it goes down. I would very much hope it doesn't go up. He threw 18 last year. We knew that was an issue. But again, some of them seemed like he just was lost out there, and just seemed like he had too much going on in the head. So I think he'll still be around that 13, 14 range. I don't think it will be down to, that 2020 year when he only had 10. I still think it will be around 14, maybe 15. But I hope it's not averaging 1 a game. I'm hoping it's more towards that 12, 13 range rather than that 15, 16 range. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, he's going to take chances, and he's going to throw some interceptions. So yeah, I don't think it will be a considerable drop off from 18, but I think it will be 4, 5, 6 less.
Yeah, I have him in a pretty similar spot. I wrote down some specific numbers, so maybe I'll be right. So I think he's going 4,243 yards. I thinking 31 passing touchdowns. I'm right with you on the picks. I'm thinking like 12, 13, something like that. Because like Josh Allen's never going to be like an Aaron Rodgers type that throws 4 interceptions in a season. It's just not the way he plays. And he wouldn't be as good as he is if he didn't play that way. So an argument to get in all the times. Like he turns the ball over a lot. Well, he also led the league in touchdowns. So, and since he's been in the league, I think we have the second highest winning percentage. So I'll take all the not all the turnovers. I'll take turnovers if they win games and he scores touchdowns, because at the end of the day, he wins, and that's the only stat that matters. And he doesn't turn the ball over in the playoffs, which a lot of people conveniently forget when they argue. And then as far as running the ball, I think he's somewhere around like 650 to 700 yards. I don't think he's going to have as many rushing touchdowns as last year because that was just insane. So I think somewhere around like 9 or 10 rushing touchdowns, something like that. And hopefully less fumbles too. Early in his career, I used to joke that his absolute favorite thing to do is fumble the football. It's gotten a little bit better. So hopefully he can clean up the fumbles a little bit as well and be, just lower the turnover ratio. Like any progress is good, but obviously, with a guy like Josh, it's never going to be perfect. But if he puts up those kind of stats similar to where he's been, I think he should have another really good season.
Yeah, he had 61 carries, according to PFF here, and 7 fumbles. So I think that definitely needs to go with a better ratio of less than 1 per 10 attempts, and that's even a greater ratio. He has more than 1 per 9 attempts even. So just has to be a lesser rate. 15 rushing touchdowns last year, you mentioned. I think with bringing Ray Davis on, and with the ineptitude to get different running backs involved by Joe Brady, that you'll see maybe that number go down, but he's still the best option at the goal line and things like that. I just think maybe we have some fewer goal line snaps this year because of the operations and things we run. Maybe we're not going to get into that situation as much, so maybe we'll be able to, score from further out and not have to deal with 3rd and 1 from the goal line as much, to where we would need to use them. Um, I think he's going to have 4,500 plus yards this year. I just think the way he's going to be able to spread the ball around and things is going to avoid some of the dips. I mean, 94 yards against Dallas last year, 178 against Denver, 169 against the Giants, and just some of those stinkers. Those were the games he had less than 200. And, I just think that with those, avoiding too many of those games, and even if one of those games goes over 300, then you're talking about 4,500 yards really. So I'm at 4,500 plus passing yards, 35 touchdowns, 14 interceptions for him. I agree with Ben though, the completion percentage I expect to be near 70. And then on the rushing side of things, I certainly think 7 to 8 rushing touchdowns is more appropriate. Had 520 yards last year rushing in the regular season. Similar, probably 500 yards around there. Maybe less, maybe 450 or so, but I don't think it's going to be like 300. So I still think he's going to be part of the running game and part of that balance that they want to achieve on offense, because he's so good at it. So that's what I think about Josh Allen's 2024 predictions. I expect him to be just as good, if not better, than ever this year, really, in a wrap of that. And so moving on to the next kind of big ticket discussion here in Buffalo, do you think Josh Allen is the best quarterback in the Bills' history?
I think talent-wise, absolutely. I think he's one of the best talent-wise in NFL history. Right now, would I put him ahead of Jim Kelly just based on like everything that he's done? Maybe not, just because Jim Kelly obviously got to 4 Super Bowls. Do I think Josh Allen will go down as the best quarterback in Bills history? Absolutely. But right this second, I still think he has some more winning to do and some more numbers to put up. So right this second, no. But will he be? Yeah, absolutely.
Does he have to win the Super Bowl for you to surpass that, or just continue his high level play of getting the Bills to divisional / AFC championship games year after year?
I'm going to say yes because I know he's watching and he needs my motivation to get him over the edge. So, yes.
I'm gonna go with no, and I'm gonna also go with yes. He already is. I mean, when we're talking about best, I mean that's the question. Are you talking about best career? Or are you talking about best player? If we're talking about best player, I think it's far and
Yeah.
away Josh. I mean, I don't think like Scott said, like yes, he's got a little bit more to do in terms of passing Jim Kelly and Bill's history when it comes to yards, playoff wins, anything like that. But if we're talking about just skill, I think it's I don't even know if it's really even should be a question when it comes to who is the more skilled player. I mean, physically, you have a stronger arm, you have a better runner. I know Jim also could go tuck the ball and go if he needed to. But even the aspect of just looking at the teams that they had, right? You had with Jim Kelly, you had a Hall of Fame running back in Thurman Thomas, who, in my opinion, is still one of the most underrated running backs of all time, and was before his time. Could do it out of the backfield in the passing game whenever Jim needed. Right, he was there. He had great receivers, and Josh obviously has had some phenomenal receivers. Stephon Diggs, that's even another huge topic of conversation. Was Diggs the best Bills receiver in history? It's kind of the similar conversation. Skill wise, yeah, maybe Stephon Diggs was the best receiver in Bills history skill wise. But when it comes to numbers, he would have had more work to do to pass the other guys in Reed and whoever else you have above him. So I think skill wise, 100% Josh Allen I think is the most skilled Buffalo Bills quarterback. But when it comes to, like Scott said, if he's got to do a little bit more to pass Jim when it comes to yards, but we're not too far away from him passing him in a lot of different categories. And he's already made his ranks in the rushing game, at least in the Bills' history. So I think that even puts it a little bit closer. So I think, in a year or two, I don't know if it will really be a question. I think I believe even Jim's come out and said, I could be wrong in this, but I believe Jim's come out and said that if he thinks that Josh Allen's the most skilled quarterback. Maybe I'm getting mixed up with a different old Bills alumni. But I do believe it was Jim. But like when it comes to skill, I mean, if you were drafting right now best Bills players of all time and you had to put the best Bills team together, I think majority of people are picking number 17.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, 2020 was not Allen's fault that we didn't get to the Super Bowl. So with that, I think Jim Kelly got lucky that his team around him was able to elevate in the times, and Josh Allen hasn't necessarily been the reason why they haven't won a game, maybe besides the Bengals game. I think the Bengals game was just a bad game for the team all around and including him. So he's got to own that one. But, Bass missing a field goal last year could have, tied the game and see what happens there. Your defense has to make a stand against Mahomes, which is probably unlikely, but still, Allen puts you in the position to potentially tie the game. So for me, I just think like his accolades aren't, his success in getting to the Super Bowls and things aren't there because he's had failures around him that maybe Jim Kelly didn't. So for me, I still think Josh Allen is going to be, I agree, he's going to be, but I think he already is the best quarterback in Bills history because I've never said, like I said, outside of that Bengals game, it's never really been like, oh man, this team didn't win because Josh Allen didn't have his A game today. I don't think that was really, it's like, oh man, Allen put them in position again and somebody else did something stupid and we lost. So that's kind of my thought process on it, but I understand there's probably a varying amount of opinions. We've gone pretty long on just Allen himself, I think. So, we'll just mention Trubisky's back here for another run with Buffalo. I think he's a solid thing. And then Shane Buechele there. Maybe they'll add some depth for camp arms, but roster's full at this moment. So unless there's some other thing they have in mind, I think we're kind of
I have
there.
one quick comment for both of them, if you
Yep,
don't mind. Mitch
absolutely.
Trubisky, he checks off the top box of being our backup quarterback, and that is that he's friends with Josh Allen. That seems to be our number one requirement. And then for Shane Buechele, people forget that he brought Texas back in 2016 when they beat Notre Dame in double overtime. So that's it. Just Texas was back, and then I think they ended up going like 6-6.
Yeah, I was gonna say the only thing for me would be if they want to bring anybody else in to replace Shane. Just for the vibes, I guess Matt Barkley would be a good option for the vibes. But when it comes to any talent, I'm not sure if you're gonna want to bring in anybody else. I like Mitch. I mean, he's like I said a while ago, he's led teams to the playoffs before. Obviously, that was a little bit ago now, but he's shown the capability to help teams win. Maybe not win at all, but if Josh goes down for a game or two, I wouldn't necessarily be like, oh, season's over. Mitch is going to definitely lose these 2 games. So, he's shown that he can play in the NFL. So,
I hope we never see either of them.
Yep, that's the hope. And if we do, I have faith in Joe Brady more than I do Mitch Trubisky to try to figure out a way to have some success on offense. Without Josh Allen, we hopefully never have to see if that comes to fruition or not. So with that, all right, Scott, you're up for your 1 minute segment, and then we'll get a question or two if anybody out there has something specific, and then we're gonna just finish up with an OTA wrap up, and I'll get my segment in, and then we'll call it a night. So appreciate everyone out there watching. Please like and share. If you're on Facebook, please go to YouTube if you're able to, and like and subscribe to the Built in Buffalo Network YouTube channel. And then if you're on X, give it a repost and a like. And if you can come over to YouTube or Facebook, interact in the chats, we'd love that. So with that, I will get Scott queued up here.
Yeah, so kind of a slow news week football-wise. So I started thinking about one of my favorite off-season football topics, and that's Hard Knocks. They just announced that the Bears are going to be on Hard Knocks for this training camp. There's also now even an off-season Hard Knocks with the Giants. Then this past season, there was the in-season Hard Knocks with the Dolphins. Basically Hard Knocks all year round now, which got me thinking, how would you feel if the Bills were on Hard Knocks? Either the training camp one, which probably won't happen because of all the ways that teams have to qualify and kind of were too good. The in-season one maybe, or the off-season one. Would you like it? Would you think it would be a distraction? Would you watch? Just what are your thoughts? Personally, I don't know if I would like it because I think it could be a bit of a distraction. And then there gets to be kind of some media hype around those teams. And it seems like the teams that are on Hard Knocks don't necessarily live up to the potential they have going into that season. Only other 2 things I have that aren't Bills related. It's horse racing season again. The Belmont in Saratoga, my hometown. I'll be there. I'm back on Sierra Leone tomorrow. Lost just by a nostril at the Derby. I think he takes it home in the Belmont. And please say a prayer for Juan Soto's left forearm. A lot of us out there need it. So that's all I got.
Love that. Love that. I would not like the Bills on Hard Knocks at all. I think that it goes kind of against everything McDermott kind of would like as well. So I guess I would enjoy seeing more because they just show so little or put so little out there for us to see at times. So you kind of have to get things through other channels to try to figure it out. And then, it's sort of just hearsay at that point. So it would be a little bit odd to be able to see. I guess it would just be different perspective to be able to see so much of some of the behind the scenes stuff. And I'm sure the Bills would be highly critical of what they're able to put out there as well. So it would be interesting in that regard, but I guess, I would rather not see that and have that extra distraction whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, this year I don't think it would have been too bad, but I think the Bills already do a great job of showing behind the scenes on their own YouTube page and everything for what we need. Now, last year, if you would have asked me this question, I would have been curious to see what the locker room was like last year, just because of what maybe we found out with what was going on with Stephon Diggs. But yeah, I mean, it would have just caused problems. And, there's a reason many teams in the league, I believe there's only 2 ever that have been like, hey, we want to do it. I think every other team has said, no, we don't want to do it. And a lot of these teams are being forced to do it. So I think it's there's a reason, right? There's a reason a lot of these teams don't want to do it. There's a lot of different voices in a locker room. There's a lot of different thoughts. There's a lot of different just views on everything in the world. And it sometimes can get a little bit heated when you do then have camera crews around videotaping everything that's going on, right? You've seen teams even talk about it, players talk about it, about how they didn't really like it. If it was the off-season one, like before the season starts, maybe I would like it a little bit better, but the in-season one, absolutely not. I would not like it all. So, yeah, I wouldn't mind if they are, but I would hope that they never do end up doing it. But yeah, I wouldn't necessarily be like upset about it. But yeah, if I had a pick, I wouldn't want them to do it.
Yeah, I assume at some point they're gonna have to take their turn, and we'll have to see how it goes from there. But who knows? Obviously, Allen's a star and would be fun to see more and more of him. And like I said, I think they'd probably lock down a lot of what was shown as far as any behind the scenes stuff to mitigate that kind of talk and chatter about any sort of rumorish type news. But we'll kind of have to see. Yeah, cross that bridge when and if we get there. So. Moving on to the next thing, just wanted to wrap up kind of the voluntary portion of OTAs. Bobby Babich spoke to the media this past week, mentioned how he's kind of following in McDermott's footsteps and has worked his way kind of through the ranks, and he started with McDermott as a position coach or assistant, and then has worked his way up through the different positions, safety and linebacker, and now as a defensive coordinator. Very interesting. Path and any comments on that, and then also his comments on not being truly ready for anything until you do it. So just wanted to kind of get feedback on overall any general thoughts about Bobby Babbitt's path to this position, and then those comments on not being ready until you actually do it. In general, it doesn't have to be a huge in-depth thing, but I just think it's worth mentioning.
Yeah, all I know is every time Bobby Babich opens his mouth, I like the guy more, and I just am glad that he's part of this organization. I mean, he not even just knowing the game, right? We've heard that plenty of times. We've talked about that plenty of times of how he knows the game very in depth. It's even the way he approaches everything, and I absolutely loved what he was talking about there with you aren't going to be ready until you do something, right? You can prepare yourself and be as prepared as you can be, but you're not going to be ready until you actually do it. So I do love that, and that even just kind of goes into the other kind of things we were talking about the past few weeks of Bobby Babich eventually taking over, slowly being introduced to it, and like he said, following Sean McDermott's footsteps. I mean, it's not exactly you can't really get much better than Sean McDermott when you're learning defense, right? And you're learning how to call a defense, because Sean McDermott knows how to put up game plans and execute them. I know he's had his own faults, but for the most part, he's one of the best defensive minds in football. And yeah, I'm really glad that Bobby Babich is being able to learn from him. And if he ends up anything like McDermott, then Bobby Babich will be a head coach somewhere in the near future, whether it's year, 2 years, 3 years from now, he will end up being one if he can end up putting it together once he does get that call to say, hey, this is my defense now. I'm calling it, and I'm calling the plays. And I think he'll be successful wherever he is.
Yeah, I'm really excited for Bobby Babich to be the DC. I love that we promoted him from in-house, and he, mentioned Sean McDermott, but he's the son of a coach. His dad was our linebackers coach before he was, so they got to coach together on the same staff, which must have been awesome. So the guy grew up around football, son of a very successful coach. So I'm hoping that quite a bit of that rubbed off on him. And like we talked about in shows past, when he was our safeties coach, our safeties were some of the best in the NFL. He moved to the linebackers coach, took over for his dad, and look what Matt Milano turned into. Look at Terrell Bernard, even Terrell Dodson, who last year people were saying, is he even going to make the team? He became an integral part of our defense. So I'm really excited to see what he can do with the whole defense. And obviously he has McDermott to lean on, because McDermott's one of the best defensive minds in the game of football. So I love his story. I'm excited to see what he can do running the defense, whether he calls plays or not. I'm sure that'll be kind of a fluid situation, but I'm really excited for it. And I think we definitely got this hire right.
Yeah, for sure. I think he interviewed, he said, with 2 other teams, wouldn't name who they were. Maybe 3 other teams were interested. He did mention that he did speak with his father, and that his father ended up stopping by and kind of said that he had a couple of notes from the practice at one point, but that, he's never trying to overload or overburden, his father, but definitely has that there as a support system for a lot of what coaches may go through, and getting some of those either questions or situations kind of being guided through those and things, from, like you said, just a successful coach in the NFL, and then also being able to have such a close relationship with McDermott, and maybe not having some of the um, pitfalls that you would have if you haven't been around a guy for long, with communication, or maybe any sort of doubt where you're not on the same page with your head coach. I think Babich and McDermott probably are in such lockstep. It makes that communication and that whole relationship super easy for them to go through. So um, the next thing that I had written down is that he's hard on rookies. So, you mentioned Terrell Bernard. Part of his success has been noted, and probably could be attributed to, Bobby Babich treatment of him as a rookie, and being what he said is giving him that anxiety, and letting him go through that in their first year, so that things can slow down for them as they progress through their career. So if he was hard on Trell Bernard, I assume that's going to be the same for Cole Bishop and Dwayne Carter, even though he's not necessarily their position coaches anymore. He's a DC, but I think I'm excited personally to see him, and how that relationship with Cole Bishop works in year one. I think Dwayne Carter also has to be considered for, how he's going to be treated, not treated, but coached, I guess, throughout the first year of his rookie campaign as well. So what do you guys think that means, in regards to Cole Bishop and Dwayne Carter, from Babich's tendency to be harder on rookies? And if you have anything to mention about that with Terrell Bernard, feel free to add that to this as well.
Yeah, I like that he's harder on the rookies. I think you kind of have to be. Josh Allen calls them SFRs, and if you know what that stands for, you know
Yep.
what that stands for. So I think being hard on the rookies is good because it sets them up to have success. Like, look at Terrell Bernard, drafted in the third round, didn't play a whole lot his rookie year. Everybody really kind of wondering, like, is he going to play his second year? Does he have to start? Like, no one liked the pick until everybody liked the pick. So I think if he can have the same kind of hard coaching mentality on Bishop and Carter, it's only going to help them. And I know there's like the stereotype that McDermott doesn't necessarily play rookies all that much, which kind of like isn't that true if you look at like the stat breakdowns, but they're going to be learning under two really good defensive minds as well as some good veterans ahead of them. So I think you kind of have to be hard on the rookies just because they don't know what they don't know yet, and they got to learn quick. This isn't like college anymore. The NFL is a whole new beast. So I think being hard on them really sets them up for success down the line, as we've seen with all of the homegrown talent we've developed, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, I agree. I think it's some players might not like it, and those are usually the players that don't last too long in the league, right? The ones that can't take that too much. Obviously, there's a line, right? There are certain lines of how far you go, but so far it looks like it worked with Terrell Bernard. You have guys coming in like Cole Bishop and Dwayne Carter who are leaders already as rookies, at least coming out of college, they were leaders. So they should have no problem with it, right? They should have no problem taking hard criticism and being almost, to the point, push to your limits. Because if you're pushed to your limits in practice, then it makes it easier again in game to adjust and be there and be ready. So I like it. I think, get them to play faster and harder in practice. So the game, like you said, Lance, slows down for them in game when it is week 1, when it is week 17, when it's, the conference championship in Buffalo or Kansas City, right? The game is slower for them by that time, and they can adjust faster maybe than other rookies. So yeah, I'm a fan of it. Lay on them, let them know it, and make them upset to the point where they don't want to make a mistake themselves and push themselves harder. Obviously, like I said, there's a line, but I think Bobby Babich probably knows that line, especially having, like Lance said, a dad as a coach. Might have been, hey, let's kind of pull it back a little bit on this, and I've learned from my mistakes. He learns from his dad's mistakes. He learns from McDermott's mistakes, right? And he just makes him a better coach. And I think it will make these players better players.
Yeah, and his minute by minute approach he spoke about too is interesting, and I think it just the attitude and mentality of some of these professionals in sports is everything, I think. And um, him going through that approach minute by minute, I think just lends itself to be such an easy way to keep yourself from being defeated by any one thing. I think it's just okay. That minute maybe didn't go the way you want it to, and you move on to the next one and try to make that the best minute. And so it's really cool approach to think about, and you could take it many different ways. So uh, the other thing he said was Kyer Elam has a clean slate now, and I'm just thinking that with Babich being inserted, the defense isn't necessarily going to change fundamentally as a whole, but I think he can add some things and maybe even add some critique at least to maybe help. And I think more so the Epic Fees in the comments. What's up, dude? I think more so that he can benefit from also some of the new coaches coming in and in their direction as well, to be able to have a little bit more success and maybe put more, I guess, get more playing time. He did suffer an injury that cost him some playing time, and we're not sure how much that really affected, the injury before we knew about the injury or after he came back. We're not sure how exactly he was. So I'm kind of excited to hear that Kyer is getting a clean slate and that with the new DBs coach and with Babich at DC that this could help Elam develop. Into a higher end CB that we've kind of maybe expected him to already be at this point, being a first round pick.
Yeah, for me, Kyrie Elam's always been kind of a weirder player to talk about, right? Because even coming out of the draft, he had a lot of adjustments. Now it's a clean slate, and I don't know if he can necessarily prove that he's a high end corner, right? That he can be that future CB1, but I think he can be. He has the athleticism, he has the ability to be a high end, maybe even cornerback number 2, right? I think a lot of it, even for him, was that mental aspect. He had to mentally adjust in the NFL to say, hey, I played this way all throughout college, all throughout my career. Now I'm going to have to change how I play. That can take a toll on somebody mentally, that you're
Mm-hmm.
completely changing how you're playing. So now that he has a kind of a new coordinator to come in and really say, hey, maybe or not new, I guess, but new to the position, to say, hey, with me, it's a clean slate. Everything from the past, forget about it. Go be you. You've taken steps. You've learned from what you need to do. So I'm glad that he's getting that clean slate. I think he's one of the best athletes on this team. And I think especially for a guy that has at least the ball skills that Kyrie Elam has. I mean, he's shown it in big moments in big games sometimes already in his career, in limited time. So I think he's a guy that hopefully can kind of say, all right, this year is going to be the turning point in my career, and just with me as a person in general too, because that, like I said, that mental aspect of, if you struggle early on in your career, it really can mess a lot of careers up. So I'm curious to see if he can take those steps this year. I think we've seen small ones as he's grown up, but he even so, he came from a completely different play style than he is now. So a lot of people, I think, expected it to be a little bit of a rough road, maybe not this rough, but I'm excited to see what he can do now with Bobby Babich kind of telling him, hey, this is a clean slate for you. Go be you.
Yeah, Elam was a guy in college that relied really heavily on his athletic ability to make plays, not necessarily his technique. Was more of kind of like the bump and run man style corner that Florida ran. Then you come to the Bills' offense, we're a very heavy zone scheme. And in a zone scheme, you have to use your head and your technique a lot more than your athleticism. So you have to kind of see the whole field and see who might be running across the field. I can't follow the shiny go route just because the guy lined up in front of me ran by me, because we're in a cover six and I have the flats. And I think he had a lot of time, or a hard time, kind of figuring that out, which is why we didn't see him on the field all that much in his first 2 seasons. I think like the perfect like example of the Kaiir Elam experience was that Steelers playoff game. Had an awful pass interference call, and then 2 plays later has a crazy pick. It's just like you really don't know what you're going to get. He's a great athlete, needs to learn a little bit more technique, learn a little bit more scheme, just get smarter as a football player. Hopefully, in the time off he had last year, and now a whole off season where he's able to kind of dive in, learn the defense a little bit better, and maybe has a better idea of what his role is going to be, because the corner room not quite as deep as it's been in years past. Trey White's gone. He's probably slotted to be our number 3 cornerback, so we can kind of get a little bit more in his role, going comfortable, and hopefully he has a good season. Would kind of be a bummer if he didn't, because I think they're going to rely on him in some situations this year. So yeah, clean slate I think is perfect. There were trade rumors last year for him. I think that's too early in the process to really do that. So yeah, clean slate, perfect. Go into camp, study the film, get in the playbook, become a student of the game, not just an athlete. And yeah, we'll see what he can do.
Yeah, and the defense last week had the upper hand, according to some. I think Sal Capaccio reported as well, and the media were saying that defense really showed out in the last voluntary OTA session that had a media availability to it. And Kaiir is going to be important because Razul Douglas hasn't been at voluntary workouts, and that's not to say there's any big issue. I did have a little chat with Josh Reed on, through a DM about this, and right now it's no big deal. Razul's doing his thing in the off season. He's not required to be anywhere. He's not missing anything that he's required to do yet. Although it's just odd that he's the one guy that's not here, but to each their own, I guess. You'd love to have 100% participation, but that's just the NFL. Some guys just aren't that way. But when you see Von Miller and those kind of guys out there, you kind of wish that everyone else kind of fell in line. But, we're going to have to see next year or next week, excuse me, if next week we come on the show and haven't seen Rasul Douglas at One Bills Drive yet, then that's going to be a pretty big cause for concern. And that's going to just, fire up that Elam talk even more. So that's kind of why I brought that up, not necessarily to keep harping. And I think we talk a lot about Elam on this show or on this network too. He's been on the network before and just a guy that we're keeping an eye on. But I also just think like he could be an important part, if things happen a certain way. So that's where I'm at with that. And if you guys have anything on, defense's performance this week or Rasul Douglas, I kind of give you a few minutes here before we kind of get into the final segment and start wrapping up.
Yeah, just one quick thing on Douglas. Contract year for him. Probably trying to negotiate something out, which could be one of the reasons he's not there. I know they did a restructure, probably wanted an extension. Maybe this is his way of kind of letting us know that. And we know cornerbacks are weird. Who knows? He'll be here when it matters, I hope.
Yeah, we all hope.
Yeah, I don't really got much on it. Like you guys said, if he doesn't show up next week, I guess since I won't even be here next week though, you guys will have a lot to talk about. But yeah, I mean, unless he's not here next week, then not much to talk about there.
Right on. All right, with that, I'm gonna take over here. And my segment this week, my big question for y'all is CJ Stroud had a list come out for top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL, and he put himself on there. Maybe slated some guys, and I just thought that it would be a cool thing to get your comments and also give my top 5 QBs in the NFL. I put Josh Allen number 1. He was the highest graded PFF quarterback last year. The playoff success isn't what Mahomes is, and I get Mahomes probably has the edge mentally on processing the game, but nobody has the physical tools and ability that Josh Allen has. So I put him at number 1 for that reason. And I think that Mahomes is number 2 right there. Allen plays for a defensive head coach. He had Dable for a few years, but doesn't have the offensive mastermind and still puts up pretty monster numbers. So, I'm going to give Allen number one, Mahomes number two. I got Joe Burrow at number three when healthy. I think he's just very good. He led the Bengals to the Super Bowl one year, so I think that you got to give him that credit. And got Matt Stafford at number four right now. Had a pretty good bounce back year. Took the Rams to the playoffs with an upstart group, and then Lamar Jackson at number five. Um, Lamar, I understand, was an MVP, but maybe in my mind not necessarily deservedly so. And we'll see. Yeah, I think he has a great ability in the run game, but still not necessarily up to par in the passing game with some of these other guys, although still very talented, still very good, but I got him at number five. So with that, let me know your top five, and we'll see what these guys think as well. Who you guys got in your top five quarterbacks in the NFL?
I basically have the same group. I have Mahomes one, as much as I hate to say it. Guys won 3 Super Bowls, beats Josh every time in the play. Well, beats the Bills every time in the playoffs. Doesn't necessarily beat Josh every time, but beats the Bills every time in the playoffs. So until we take him down, I think you got to have Mahomes one. I have Josh Allen two, Burrow three. I think those top three are probably kind of interchangeable. Like if any team would take any three of those guys over their guy, except for those 3 teams, I would imagine. So those 3 pretty interchangeable. And then Lamar at 4. I don't know. I kind of agree to what you said. Maybe a little bit overrated. Won a couple of MVPs because of what he can do with his legs and maybe the situation around him. I live in Baltimore, so all I do is hear about how good Lamar Jackson is, and I'm kind of sick of it. And then my number 5, CJ Stroud. I know he hasn't really done anything yet, but he came in last year as a rookie, took the league by storm, led a Texans team that I think their over-under for wins was like 4.5, won their division, brought him to the playoffs. We'll see what he does this year. Maybe he has some kind of a sophomore slump. Maybe he and, Diggs argue like Josh and Diggs did. Maybe, throws him off a little bit. But I have CJ Stroud rounding out my top 5. But that one maybe a little more of potential versus what he's already done.
Yeah, I mean, you guys heard me talking about before we hopped on here, kind of just being all over right now with my top 5. I mean, I have number 1, Mahomes. As much as I want to put Allen there, you can't. I mean, it's hard for me to argue that Josh Allen, at least, maybe like Lance said, skill wise, sure, maybe he is superior to Mahomes. But if you account everything, I gotta put Mahomes number 1. I do think Allen's number 2. I'm actually gonna go Lamar Jackson number 3. I mean, I think, yes, some people, his running does play a factor, but at the end of the day, that's part of his game, right? That was a big thing for Bills fans was people tried to take away Josh Allen's ability and say that he wasn't as good because he ran the ball. I mean, I think Lamar Jackson, that adds an aspect to his game. He hasn't exactly had an offense his whole career that has been able to showcase his passing, and I think when he does throw the ball, he can throw it pretty well. And he's not the best passer in the league, but he can make some phenomenal throws. So I'm going to put him at 3. I'm a little bit of a bigger Lamar fan than most. Number 4, I'm actually going to go with Matthew Stafford. I think when you look at longevity, when you look at what he's been able to do in LA, he's won a Super Bowl. He came back after an injury, and again, like Scott said, he's been able to lead a team or to the playoffs again that wasn't even looked at to be a playoff team, right? So he's going to be my number 4. Number 5. This one, I'm a little bit surprised. I think on how. Before the show, when we were talking maybe on how low people are on him, especially even you guys, is Justin Herbert. I think Justin Herbert has had kind of like a Josh Allen, but even to a worse extent of the team letting him down. Right? He's had defenses he's been in shootouts where he put up 45 points and lost. He's had games where he's put up 38 and lost consecutively, and just defenses losing it for him, or coaches being imbeciles because he's had one of the worst coaching staffs he's had to start his career. He's had drops from receivers in big moments. He's made some unbelievable throws that even top some of Josh Allen's throws, right? In tight windows with the arm strength. He's able to get out of the pocket. So Justin Herbert, I know that he's kind of like he's about 2 or 3 years more along than Stroud, I think, is, where Stroud, still has a little bit more that he's got to prove. I think Herbert, yes, he still has a little bit more to prove, but I think he's proved enough to the point where, yes, I think he is a top 5 quarterback. And I think this year with a competent coach, or at least so far we think a competent coach, and he's shown it that he is a competent coach. I think it will be a little bit different this year. I think even just getting a just new offensive look for him, I think will be good for his career. So I'm going to put Herbert at 5. I know I left Joe Burrow off there. Maybe I'm a Joe Burrow hater, but for me, it's just, you've seen even in big games, him get bailed out certain ways, him have his, whether it's his defense or the unbelievable Jamar Chase, T Higgins, those guys are obviously unbelievable. So I would like to see him. Maybe this year we do see it this year without T Higgins. I know that's been an issue with his contract. Maybe he holds out. But he's been surrounded by some significant talent, and even I know a lot of these other guys have missed some games, but one of the best qualities to a quarterback is your availability. He's had 2 years where he's only played 10 games. And, I'd like to see a little bit more out of him. But like I said, I have no issue with, I think, people putting him in his top 5, even top 3, like you were saying, Scott. I do understand why people have him there. It's just, for me, I don't know, something just kind of rubs me off when I watch him play. Of, hey, there's something that just, in that 5-6 range, I could see him at, maybe above Herbert, maybe above Stafford. But when it comes to the top 3, I'm pretty set on Allen, Mahomes, and Lamar there. But I like I said, I don't blame anybody for having Burrow top 3, top 4. So that's where
you're
I'm
also
at.
a Boston fan, so I guess we'll have to forgive you for multiple things on this show.
3
So
more.
we'll see. I can't believe Al Horford's still doing that. Jesus. Sorry.
Do it for Al.
But
Do it for Al.
yeah, so good stuff, guys. I really appreciate it. Herbert is definitely knocking on the door. He's a great talent. Definitely think Burrow, when healthy, and availability is the best ability, so we'd have to keep that in mind. I just think that he does have that in his pocket, that he did beat Mahomes in the playoffs and took his team to a Super Bowl. So I think that, for me, gets him a little bit of leniency. So with that said, this is a good show. Appreciate everyone's time. If you're listening on a podcast, feel free to like it and share it. Give us a download. For those watching live or watching the video versions on YouTube, Facebook, or X, please give it a like, a share, a repost. Be sure to go over to the Built in Buffalo YouTube channel and give it a subscribe, and catch us every Friday night at 8 p.m. We also have Founders Pod tomorrow, and Izzy's got Red Zone Report on Sundays, Buffalo Against the World on Monday, and then Wednesday starts Going Deep and The Hoof on Thursday. So great lineup we have for live shows at night, and then there's a few time shows in there. T does her thing at 2 p.m.s on Thursdays, I believe, and then we have Not Another Buffalo Podcast, who just dropped an episode earlier today. So go out and check out the Built in Buffalo YouTube page. Lots of good stuff out there. We'll have a long form clip from this show out, and we'll also be posting shorts periodically as well. So just go out, follow the Built in Buffalo YouTube page, give it a subscribe, and we really appreciate that, your help with climbing up the YouTube algorithm. So with that being said, this was Triple Coverage. I am Lance Nelson. To my right, Ben Shoup. To my left, Scott Casson. And go Bills.
Go Bills.